this is Boule, and I hope you're having a most marvelous day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. Well, today I'm going to do my review of The Woman King, and I'm entitling this video, Despite the Noise, It's a Good Movie. I'm going to start by saying that I am a descendant of slaves on both sides of my family, and my family stayed in the South, so we went through the entire process, and the main body of my family is still living in the South. So I care as much about the history, the narrative, what happened, and what they say happened as anybody. I didn't just learn about Dahomey's involvement in slavery when this movie came out. I've known about it for quite some time. And I have done study. I have studied this. I have studied the Agoija soldiers. So having said that, I look at the movie as a part of Dahomey's history. It's about 2 hours, and you can't tell the entire history of a country in 2 hours. So they told a part of Dahomey's history, and I was willing to receive it as a movie. Not as a documentary where they were going to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, but as a movie where they were going to tell part of the story. And they told the story of the Agoija's involvement in Dahomey winning their independence from the Oyo Empire. That was the story I saw, and it was told very well. Dahomey was a territory of the Oyo Empire, and through slave trading, yes, Dahomey had built its own infrastructure, and they were trying to pull away to gain their independence from the Oyo Empire. That's what the movie was about. The movie was not about the transatlantic slave trade, even though it was in the background. So the critique of the movie is that they didn't place enough emphasis on the transatlantic slave trade. That is correct. They did not place heavy emphasis on Dahomey's involvement in the slave trade. It was mentioned, but it was not emphasized. A second critique is that those women soldiers helped to attack villages, the villages that those of us who came out of Dahomey, the villages that our families would have lived in, and captured our family members, took them to the king, and he sold them to the Europeans. That's true. The emphasis is not on that. But the movie is about gaining independence from the Oyo. And what was really exciting about the movie is that these women were groomed to fight. And the basic training they went through to learn how to fight was very exciting. Now, from the historical perspective, those are the two things that I hear the boycotters complaining about, that it does not emphasize Dahomey's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade, and it does not emphasize the fact that those women warriors were going into villages, attacking villages, capturing people, and taking them to the king for him to sell to the Europeans. Now, those are the two historical complaints, and they are right about that. Those two things are not spelled out, and they're not in concrete, and they're not emphasized in the movie. The boycotters are right about that. But there were more powerful strengths of that movie. It was a powerful story of commitment, of bravery, and of the willingness to give up everything, to fight for what you believed in. In this case, it was their country and their independence. And it told a powerful story of strength and commitment and fighting for what you believe in. The second point, or the second emphasis, was to show the grooming and the training of the Agoija soldiers, and then to show their fighting skills in battle. Another point of the movie was to show the character Narcisca, who was played by Viola Davis, and to show her development into the general of the army who was willing to really fight, to put her life on the line for her country. So the overall purpose of the story was to focus on the part that the women soldiers played in gaining their independence from the Oyo Empire. There was a scene where they got into a big fight with some slave traders, but that was not the arc of the movie. The movie was shot in South Africa, and it showed the beautiful landscape, the beautiful mountains and hills and vegetation of South Africa. It was just breathtaking. The action choreography when the women were really in battle was extraordinary. The relationship between the women was also very touching. There were some surprises in the movie. The costumes were done in a period fashion and they were realistic. The camaraderie and the bond that the women developed with each other was very moving, as well as their fellowshipping, their dancing and their talking and their conversation. All of it was very compelling. Most interesting was showing what the everyday life in an African kingdom would be like in the 19th century. It showed what a royal palace would have been like, what the king's relationship would be with the people and all those wives. He had several wives, and they were on display in some fashion. The Agoija soldiers were the king's wives, not in the physical sense, but in the spiritual sense. Spiritually, they were married to the king. The most important thing about this movie is that it gets African Americans' minds back across the Atlantic Ocean. I have always believed that the true beginning of African Americans healing from the whole trauma and tragedy of slavery is that we have to go back across the Atlantic and rediscover who we were. Now, even though some people are criticizing this movie, it still gets us thinking about what happened. It takes us back into Africa. And it makes us learn something. We're going to get something out of this movie about who we were if it's just knowing about these women soldiers. The story that they're telling in The Woman King is fact mixed with fiction, like most movies. They're not trying to tell the exact truth. They're telling some truth, but they're adding enough action and enough falsity to make it entertaining. Hollywood is not an international historical society. Hollywood is an entertainment industry. So their goal is to entertain, not to educate people about their history. So let's go over some of the truths of the movie again. King Gizo was the king of Dahomey from 1818 to 1860. Those women warriors were real. They fought for the independence of Dahomey, and Dahomey was a major slave trading kingdom. So those are some facts. My suggestion is, if you can approach the movie with an open mind, if you would like to get an idea of what an African kingdom was like in the 19th century, and to learn something about those women soldiers and their training, if you would like to learn a little bit about that and be mesmerized by the script and the acting, then go see the movie, because you will be entertained. If you would like to know the history of Dahomey, I suggest reading a book. I have a very good book that I can suggest. You could check out books in the library, and there's also Wikipedia and Google, where you can really Google the country and learn about the history of Dahomey. But a movie is not a place to go to learn about the actual history of any country. As for the boycotters, I have been listening to these people on social media. First of all, I don't believe these people care anything about the history of Dahomey or accurate portrayals in the movie. I don't think that it's very hard for me to believe that these people actually care about what has happened to black people. Because if they really cared about black people, I think they would also be addressing black on black crime. I think they would be addressing mass incarceration. They would be trying to get some kind of big boycott or some kind of big movement going against mass incarceration, against unemployment among black men, low achieving rates, including not learning a trade or preparing for a profession. And most of all, they would be doing something about this trap and drill music that's so destructive in the black community. So I think all of this outrage and all of this concern about this movie is phony. It just seems phony to me. I don't doubt that there are some people who are concerned about the accuracy of the movie. There are people that are always concerned about the accuracy of a movie when it's historical and the historical values are not properly assigned. That doesn't seem to be this group's objective. They care about this movie because it's a black woman being called a king, and this movie is driven by black woman power and talent. And I think that has a lot to do with it, whether these are black men or black women complaining about this movie. I believe that's what that's about because I have listened to a lot of them, and that is what I'm getting from it. And the reason I'm saying this is because some of these people reviewed the movie before the movie even came out. And some of them are still trying to review the movie, and they haven't even seen the movie. It is just really infuriating to some of these men that the movie is named The Woman King. And if you would watch the movie, you would see how that came about. And I don't want to be a spoiler, but they need to see the movie to see why it's called The Woman King. And there are instances in Africa where women are called king. Even in ancient Egypt, Hatshepsut, and I'm sure I didn't pronounce her name right, was a pharaoh. A pharaoh was a king. It is not the norm for a woman to be a king, but because of her extraordinary abilities or because of inheritance from her father or her husband, she can become a king. I want to recommend an excellent book called The Dahomean. This book is a historical fiction written by an African American who moved to West Africa and lived among the people and study the way of life from ancient time. It goes deep into the culture, the traditions, the history of Dahomey. And the ending of the book is truly moving. That book stayed with me for days. This book has a sweet romantic angle, but it is historically based, and it gives you a good idea of what the Dahomean kingdom was like during King Gizo's time. Finally, The Woman King did well the first week at the box office. It's number 2 for the second week, and it hasn't been released in foreign markets yet. So, for those who wanted it to truly fail, you are going to be disappointed. The Woman King has a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and is blowing audiences away. And the critical consensus is all hail Viola Davis. John Boyega now is saying that he has an idea for a sequel. They did what they needed to do to convince the people who will make a decision about whether Viola Davis or John Boyega can get a movie made. They've made that decision about that. So everybody running around trying to drag the movie, talking about it's a failure, it's a flop, and they're trying to prop it up. Well, they prop all of their movies up. Hollywood props up all of its movies. So I believe that Viola Davis has come up with a winner. It was a small budget movie. So I'm wishing the cast, the characters, and everybody who brought that movie to the screen success. Okay, thank you for listening. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.